Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling The New Republic Exposes Worldwide Climate Criminal Network, Engineering Criminalization of Climate Protest. So, this is based on a recent article that came out in the New Republic on the 12th by two journalists, Amy Westervelt and Jeff Dembicki, or Dembicki, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. But, and it's called Meet the Shadowy Global Network Vilifying Climate Protesters. So my title is maybe a little bit confusing, but I think their title also adds something to the picture or makes it clearer. And the subhead is, for decades, the Atlas Network has used its reach and influence to spread conservative philosophy and criminalize climate protest. So I think this is a very, very critical piece of research and writing from the New Republic, from these two authors, these two reporters, that fills in many gaps in our understanding of the world of right-wing think tanks and also climate denial, networks of climate denial, and how they've operated since the Second World War, essentially. So, and this is, even though at the time of the Second World War, climate change was not yet really a political issue and wasn't even scientifically confirmed as it became in the 70s and 80s by actual scientific data. But anyway, this network is a network of many of the much better known think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, the Heartland Institute, the Competitive Enterprise Institute. So these are all very critical places, much better known think tanks that we know to have been instrumental in engineering climate denial, in creating an atmosphere where climate scientists and also politicians and also activists needed to constantly justify and to argue whether climate change actually was happening, rather than act on it, rather than discuss how we were going to act on it. And these this network is still very active, and the interesting part of it, from the point of view, or I mean, there's a number of interesting parts, but from the point of view of climate activists, they are very much involved in criminalizing climate activism. So climate activism, in most of its forms, is an expression of really the highest ethical and civic concern that people can have currently in the world. That climate activists, in my mind, are model citizens. They are climate activists that act nonviolently, that act, in a way that makes their activism known and makes it clear what they're protesting and also what they're demanding, is, to me, the highest in the current situation level of, or one of the, you could say there are other kinds of civic involvement that are also equally as important, but it is one of the highest ways to be a citizen and to be not only a citizen of your national group, whatever nation you live in, but also a citizen of the world, of to make an example of your activism and as a form of solidarity with other people around the world. And so this this network, though, this Atlas network, based in Virginia, is Arlington, Virginia, is a shadowy, as it says in they don't really publicize themselves. They don't have a huge budget, but they are not the core funders of climate denial. But they direct and they route various information or various strategies. They create, they make conferences and so forth and so on, and so they are trying to present a vision of basically a right-wing economic vision that preempts and makes climate activism and climate action to be something that is antithetical, they think, to whatever the society is they're trying to build. And so, they then create hysterical concern about climate activism, activists calling them terrorists, so forth and so on. We see this in the United States with the Stop Cop City, protests being called domestic terrorists, and we see this also in Germany and in other countries where you have this extremely harsh movement against what to me are model citizens. In other words, calling attention to a major social problem, and this network has and there are prominent politicians. For instance, in Germany, there's a politician named Schäffler from the FDP, the Libertarian Party in Germany, that is right-wing Libertarian Party mostly, or it's considered to be sort of in the center, but on economic issues, extreme right-wing party. And one of its members of the Bundestag is basically a Hayekian. Okay, so this story, what's so interesting, fascinating about it, is that there was a singular figure, a British man named Antony Fisher, who founded the Atlas Network Fisher. Okay, Antony Fisher. And he, or Antony Fisher, Antony Fisher, who, he's no longer with us, but he became an acolyte, essentially, of Friedrich von Hayek, and also opposed the social democratic turn in England, and started to create what became what was called the Institute of Economic Affairs, which promoted Hayekian economics, and also the more famous or the more well-known Mont Pelerin Institute essentially became or Mont Pelerin Society became a outpost of that society's teachings, the neoliberalism that was expounded at Mont Pelerin or through Mont Pelerin's work. And so you have then this network that is essentially a network of extreme free market fanatics who are believing that anything that could suggest that the free market is failing, for instance, climate change, and that would therefore suggest that government action is necessary and government planning is necessary. These are all things that Hayek attempted to show to be entirely wrong and dictatorial, and would always lead in his famous book, The Road to Serfdom, to the undermining of democracy, and therefore, and he claimed for himself, quote unquote, liberalism, the idea that he was an apostle of democracy, an apostle of he called himself a classical liberal, and so this is also what Charles Koch calls himself, and the Koch brothers called themselves when David Koch is obviously no longer with us, but anyway, that they consider themselves to be defending what Europeans call liberalism, which is basically free market or laissez-faire economics, and the idea that democracy is based on laissez-faire economics, and therefore the social democratic turn after, during the Depression and thereafter was totally wrong and was tantamount to totalitarianism, and so forth and so on. So the idea that climate action and does involve a large government component to it, and this is something that these people recognized very earlier on than those people who said, well, we need to do something about the climate, and who then lashed themselves onto, for a good long time, the idea of somehow taxing or cap and trade as being the only way to really deal with the externality of climate change. In other words, that the market does not price in the damage done to the environment, in this case to the climate, by its own pricing, by the pricing mechanism. And so this goes against the shibboleths of the quote-unquote Austrian School of Economics, which Hayek is associated with, and also the neoliberal turn that has a very strong purchase in academic economics. So these activists, these right-wing activists, are many of them now this Atlas network is filled with basically rich people on its board and so forth and so on, and or people who call themselves investors or CEOs and so forth and so on. They are only focused on a business-led approach to anything and to development. So that is their quote unquote charitable goal, is a form of development that is quote unquote free market. And so anyway, they have been they are so convinced of their this is where this free market idea is a fanatical fixed idea, even though lots of academic economics is built on an adjacent portion of economic theory that suggests that it's real, that it's important, and you hear all kinds of people who have been indoctrinated in that, talking on business television and so forth and so on, and in political, not just in business, journalism, but also in, various political forums and so forth and so on, because the part of economics that suggests that no government has a very strong role in shaping economies and shaping the direction of economies, and especially when you have enormous failures of business to deal with a problem that they have, and that they're unable to deal with something that is beyond their ability to innovate or to create products and so, and sell products and services and make a profit and so forth and so on. And in fact, that their activities add to that, okay, that they're, in the case of climate change, that most businesses that are currently extant tend to add to that problem of climate change. So not all of them do to the same degree, and some of those businesses, this is where it gets difficult to parse out in terms of what is the ideology of radical climate action. What is the in the old terms of whether it's socialist, whether it's social democratic, so forth and so on. It's clearly one of those, okay, but it's not the free market. ideology that's promoted by the rich people that fund the Atlas Network. And the Atlas Network worms its way through the waters of mainstream economics. In other words, through this sort of consensus about that somehow that markets are, the natural state of economies, so forth and so on, and that rich people who have been particularly successful in selling a product or selling a service or just have lots of money in their bank account somehow have a special place in this system and in the political economy, in politics, that they have now injected themselves and attempt to stigmatize the people who are fighting for our lives, who are fighting for human survival, by saying we need radical climate action, and we have a climate emergency that's going on. It's due to business as usual in the world economy, and it needs to be. We need to change that through a mobilization of resources by government. So this is me speaking. Sometimes, climate activists are saying we should stop using fossil fuels, so forth and so on, which we should. We should no new fossil fuel development. We should. That's all. No new fossil, projects. Stepwise convert all energy to electricity, and then produce that electricity through renewable means. All of that stuff is and not just at a leisurely pace, but at a accelerated pace. Okay, and also if you are, if you really look at the problem, also a certain level of degrowth in the developed world, where we no longer consume so much material resources and energy resources to do what we desire to do, and we find ways to use the resources that we have more efficiently, and also to take a step back from some of the more excessive, wasteful activities that we do in the developed world, in that top 10% of the world that consumes a vast majority of the resources and contributes to the vast majority of the carbon emissions. So, but all of that in the context of a transformation of it. Not just, there are some people who imagine a truncation of those people and say, they just need to be essentially offed, or we need to just change that they are the problem, and once they are changed, then everything is hunky-dory. No, we need a systemic change where the desirable state of prosperity is a state of circularity, and for the economy, for communities, for nations, so forth and so on, for international trade, is a state where it's circular and in its use of material and energy resources, and the use of the atmosphere, the use of water resources, the use of the resources of the soil, so forth and so on, or soils, or the land. And so anyway, this network is nowhere near any of this. It's about criminalizing and making the people who are trying to deal with these, I would consider myself one of those people, but anyway, who are trying to focus on what we need to be doing seriously, by pushing it out, and by saying, no, the people who are pushing for this, who are pushing governments, who are protesting, who are putting their bodies on the line, are terrorists, are criminals, so forth and so on, and trying to keep them in some sense out of the discussion of in the great big public sphere of different countries of the world. And so they have these apostles who are in various forms Hayekian, okay, this Atlas Network, and who are various forms fanatical believers in the free market that never existed, that is a chimera, that is or that it's kind of carted out as a way to quash rational government policy and discussions of government policy, which we need to be doing right now. So anyway, I just want to point you to this. I'm sorry for the long excursus about economic theory, but that is the matrix in which this article you'll understand why these people can have the power that they do through their think tanks and so forth and so on to influence public discourse. They are the criminals. Okay, these are climate criminals. Okay, so this is where I'm adding. These people are a criminal element within our society, even though they have all of this, pomp and circumstance with which they clothe themselves, including the traps, the raiments of bad economics that's taught as mainstream economics, but also the more fanatical, what we call Austrian school of economics, or Hayekian economics, or neoliberalism, or libertarian economics. And so they are using that. They are the criminals, but they are trying to criminalize the people who are the upstanding citizens, who are doing the right thing. So we need to be focusing on, as a climate movement, as to ring fence these people and to perhaps, certainly they need to be stigmatized, they need to be shamed, they need to be pushed out of, they need to be excised from the public sphere and their role in it. Whether they should serve time in jail and so forth and so on, I don't think so. But they are still climate criminals. They are still responsible for clogging the public sphere with their bilge, with their intellectual bilge, with their anti-science lies. So they are against the Enlightenment. They have created a false path through to claim that they are basing their work on thinking, or on think tanks, and on smart people who have smart ideas, but they are against science. They're against the data of science that is now basically inundating people, killing the people of Libya, of Greece, and so forth and so on. Other places, it will continue. It will go on and on, and this the people who are standing up, the upright citizens who are standing up, the people who are civic minded, need to locate their enemies, locate the people, the actual criminals, and point them out, and again ring fence them, and make the politicians with the power realize that they are being manipulated by these people, that they are being used by these people, or they are corrupt and they're being bribed by their rich paymasters, because there are rich people involved here. There are rich criminals involved. Okay. Climate criminals. So anyway, I would encourage you to read the article and also think about what we're going to do next as a climate movement, to expose these people and to expose their networks of influence, and in a public way, and to make it hard for respectable politicians and respectable journalists to ignore their nefarious and, I would say, evil influence on public discourse. So anyway, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Am I being too extreme in my language here? Or is this just right for what these people have been doing? The criminalization of upright, civic-minded citizens by nefarious, villains, okay, by actors, by criminal actors who are pretending to know how economies work, how the world works, but they don't. They don't. They are simply, all they know about is how to continue their game, and to continue the game that gains them the economic advantages, but what lays waste to the whole world, lays waste to the world of their children too. So they are undermining their own the prospects of their own children. So anyway, please again share your thoughts in the comments. Please like the video if you got anything out of it, and please subscribe to Politics 2100. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.